Apparently, there's a big news item coming tomorrow as well.
Yeah, the Justice League. Mm-hmm.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for, and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
Hey, happy Tuesday, everybody. We are now live. You're watching Splash Pages. My name is Leo. I'm the monkey behind the keyboard here. We have an exciting episode for you today, but as always, Velvet Joker, how's it going, bud?
Everything is awesome. Everything is awesome.
Love it. Drew!
Oh, hey, everyone.
Put the book
Welcome
down.
to Gotham by Gaslight. I'm almost done.
Nothing like waiting to the last minute, Drew.
Here we are, another evening.
Yeah, totally. Just want to say, definitely, we did a post about this, but a very happy birthday to the late great Bill Finger.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all know, and if you don't know, you should definitely check out the documentary. On the left is Batman without Bill Finger. On the right is Batman with Bill Finger. Without his input, Bob Kane would have made some very bad choices.
Indeed.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Totally.
Yeah. And we had his granddaughter here, right here on the award-winning Splash Pages.
And if I'm also correct, I do believe her fiance Rick, it's his birthday.
Yes.
You know,
Rick Stafford, the king of Atlantis.
You know, and a very happy birthday to you, sir. And I hope no one serves you fish sticks. Thank you. I'm good.
Nice.
Sorry, I meant it. This one.
Get out, both of you. First.
Where's the gong? Where's the gong?
And then him.
Yeah.
Now, let's get to, before we get to discussing this fantastic comic, let's get to some comic news.
Yeah.
Obviously, the big news that we're obviously this tributing to is that the late great Brian Augustyn, who is a former editor of DC and a writer, as well as working with other companies, passed away recently from complications from a stroke. He was 67. it's a serious loss considering all the things that he had done, both as an editor and as a writer for not just DC but other comic companies. Currently, one of his frequent collaborators and close friends, Mark Waid, is encouraging that if any fans want to reach out and write letters to his family, kind of essentially commemorate his experience, he's provided their address to do so. I know myself, I'm most likely going to send something as well, being that I am a fan and I've had the pleasure of meeting Brian in 2016. So that's one. And then the second one, which is something that our illustrious Velvet Joker had pointed out to me, the fantastic, well-received writer-artist Walt Simonson, him and his wife Louise, their dog, who is appropriately named Loki, has recently passed away, and Walt did a beautiful tribute to his dog, which showed his dog Loki crossing over the Rainbow Bridge. I thoroughly recommend all fans of Thor to definitely check that out and just kind of celebrate that, even in pain, some of our most creative can still do something beautiful.
Right. And hey, Drew, I've got that address right here. So if you guys do want to send anything in commemoration of Brian Augustyn, you can send it to Mark Waid for the Augustins. It's spelled AUGUSTYNS, care of Humanoids. And that is at 6464 Sunset Boulevard, Suite 1180 in Los Angeles, California, 90028.
Thank you very much, Rich.
And if you guys didn't catch that and aren't able to rewind it, or sometime I wasn't clear, just look up Mark Waid on Facebook. It's going to be a post in the last week. You'll see the address there.
Absolutely. And everybody, like I said, it is a definitely sad loss. But before we get to commemorating what in my mind is still one of Brian's finest work, besides his 8-year Flash run that he did with Mark Waid, which is still one of the best, there is some comic news. So, gentlemen, before I get to some of what I have, anything you want to bring to the table?
Well, one of the things you'll probably bring up. So we have a tweet from Joshua Williamson, New York Times bestselling author, Image Comics, Nailbiter, Birthright, Ghosted, DC Comics, Flash, Bats, and blah, blah, blah. So he tweeted, big announcement tomorrow, art by Sam Pierre, and I'm not going to pronounce that. So I am seeing a report, and you, actually, Drew, you probably know what's going on with this.
What?
So it's Death of Justice League. Games Radar is reporting that it's setting up DC's next tentpole event called Dark Crisis.
Yes. It's been very frequently hinted at that this is going to be the next one. There aren't really a lot of details out, but considering that it has the word crisis attached to it, we can definitely assume that that's going to be pretty intense. I mean, we've seen last time they had a crisis, otherwise known as you had metal, and then you had absolute metal or dark metal. The Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo massive event, which was I think 2 years ago, which was it was gigantic. It's going to be very interesting, especially with this new Justice League. You have Brian Michael Bendis is basically wrapping up his Justice League run, and you have artist Sanford Green on it, who has always been one of my subtle favorites, getting his due for the amazing artist he is. So it's going to be really awesome. I thoroughly recommend it. As we talked about last time, I don't really feel any of the deaths are going to be permanent, but should be interesting to see where the story goes.
Well, as we know, death in the DC universe is almost never permanent.
Ever.
No. But they are killing off most of the Justice League in April, looks like.
Except for one member will live.
Really?
One survivor.
But we don't know who.
We don't know who, but everything is, of course, hinted at in covers and stuff. We'll probably know soon enough. Us nerds, we can't keep our mouths shut.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of DC, there was actually another thing that recently that I'd like to bring up is that there is a prominent artist there who has been accused of plagiarism.
Ooh.
Yes, Joelle Jones, who is a popular DC artist. She's also responsible for creating Yara Flor, who is the future state Wonder Girl, who popularity became so much that she had her own series, which recently wrapped up issue 7, but is also going to be a prominent member in DC and in the upcoming trial of the Amazon series. Joelle has been accused of plagiarizing X-Men artist Pepe Larraz' artwork. A Twitter user basically showed images from Pepe Larraz's X-Men work most recently, and then showed images of Joelle Jones's work, some of her upcoming work for the Trial of Amazon series, and you know, I'm not going to lie, they do look pretty identical. And now, this is something that tracing has very much been a very common discussion and debate in comics. Artists borrow from artists as well, and it's not unheard of. But unfortunately, I think it's just a case of an artist who was stressed trying to meet a deadline, cut a few corners, and kind of hoped that nobody would notice. But it's the internet. There are eyes everywhere. So personally, I think it's sad that, yes.
And
As you-
just for reference, this is coming from Screen Rant.
Yeah, no comment there.
Nope. But just
It wasn't. I did not write the article. I want to point that
no. But we want to give credit where credit is due.
Indeed. And personally speaking, I'm hoping that the criticism isn't too harsh. I mean, plagiarism is a serious thing, but hopefully this isn't a, ending of a career kind of mistake. Like I said, dumb, ill-advised, but not career crushing, in my opinion.
The question would be why?
Like I said, Rich, it's just unfortunately you want to reach a deadline. So like I said, you cut corners, you kind of go for an easy alternative. And you just, again, you switch the costumes and whatnot. I mean, there are some artists who have been dealing with these criticisms for years. The one that brings to the note is Greg Land. He's a popular Marvel artist. For years, he's been accused of tracing, borrowing figures from all sorts of entertainment, including porn. There are subreddits dedicated to people who compare images that he's done to other images, and it's once you kind of see it, it's kind of hard to argue against it. You're like, okay, this is so, and one more thing to note, which I'm very excited about, I just found out about this recently, is that switching gears to Marvel, two things. One, in following the movie Shang-Chi, the 10 Rings, the character himself will actually be wielding the 10 rings just like his MCU counterpart. So that in itself is going to be pretty exciting. They're definitely, again, doing what works for the movies. We want to make sure our comics reflect that. Also, we're seeing a return to nostalgia by a new 2099 miniseries. For those who don't know, 2099 was a 1992 storyline which saw a future of the Marvel universe. So it started off with Spider-Man, then we saw the X-Men, then we saw the Punisher, we saw Doctor Doom, and a bunch of new characters as well, all futuristic versions of these characters in a future where corporations rule everything. We're returning back to 2099. And of course, our favorite, the man who started it all, Miguel O'Hara, the Spider-Man 2099, will be very prominently featured in the 2-issue series. But there will also be spin-offs, little one-shots featuring new 29 versions we haven't seen before. One of them will be Winter Soldier 2099 and Loki 2099, which should be pretty interesting.
It makes sense for them to do that because the next movie coming out for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is going to have Spider-Man 2099 in it.
Indeed. So again, more. We're just seeing more and more of Marvel's play is whatever the movies, the animated will do. Our work will have that nice parallel, those hooks to get the new readers in. I don't recall the dates for these, but it's pretty exciting that 2099 is still pretty prominent. I mean, it was a 1992 comic series. Miguel O'Hara is still very prominent in the Spider-Man and the Marvel, and it's nice to see, the other not so popular characters also getting a little light. So definitely cool there. That's all I had. What about you two?
I have a couple more items. Just real quick. The tickets for the Batman have gone on sale for the special IMAX release. I guess the IMAX release is going to be released a little early. So it's like a special fan event. And I believe it has the fan event has like a runtime of 3 hours and 6 minutes.
Yeah, I heard it was going to be a 3 hour.
Yeah.
It's funny that I hear that people criticize that, but yet Endgame was literally close to that. And
I'm not criticizing it.
No, I know. I'm just saying
better.
Is that people will scoff at that, like, 3 hours. And I was like, my dude, people sat for 4 hours for a Snyder cut. Like
4 hours for a Snyder cut. How long was Dune?
I don't even know.
Dune was wicked. It was like,
I think it was 3 hours and change.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a long book. And I mean, the same thing with Endgame. Endgame was close to 3 hours. I seem to recall it was like 2 hours and 30 something minutes, right?
Yeah. Hey, Darren, how's it going?
Look at that.
Hold on, Darren.
Look at that rhyme. But okay, that's exciting. I have to admit to you guys, I'm still on the fence about this one just because I feel I'm Batmaned out.
What?
Well, okay. Let me briefly explain what I mean by that, and Rich probably can back me up on this because
I'm going to feel similar to Drew.
Yeah. So my thing being is, we have seen so many Batman already in our lifetime. We're at and this isn't counting animated, in which, with all due respect, Kevin Conroy is still king. Although everybody who has also voiced Batman still gets credit because, give credit where credit's due. We have seen 6, maybe 7 live action Batman in our lifetime. And it's just it's great because it's kind of like Batman is the American version of Doctor Who. It's always someone new and they bring something new to the table, and everybody has their favorites. But at the same time, it's just how many times do we have the same, angry vigilante, the same origin story, the same, new versions of characters. I mean, this is the 7th Batman. This is the 3rd Catwoman, the 2nd Riddler. I mean, I don't mean to look at it that way because obviously I think it's going to be good. Personally, when the first trailer came out, I loved the use of Nirvana in the trailer. I thought it was perfect. And my criticism isn't even I think Robert Pattinson is going to do a good job. I think Zoe Kravitz is going to do a good job as Catwoman. I think Jeffrey Wright's going to do a great job as Commissioner Gordon. Whoever is the Riddler, I'm sure he's going to do great. And Colin Farrell as Penguin is still blowing my mind because the makeup is amazing.
That's insane.
It's just, again, it's another Batman movie. And I'm excited, but it's just, how many times it's like when we hear it's another number 1. We're starting again. It's another issue 1. And then it's just how much longer until then there'll be another Batman. There'll be,
Well, I think DC and they're totally smart if they're going this way, going more black label for the entertainment. Because we had a young Bruce Wayne and Joker. We're having 89 Batman making a return in Flash.
Right.
And we still have Affleck. Apparently he's going to make an appearance somewhere. And then this is a standalone story, but everything I'm hearing though is this is the first time that we're going to see on screen a true representation of Batman the detective.
Yes.
Which I'm extremely excited about.
Well,
Now,
I think, yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Rich.
Drew.
No, Rich. I was just going to say I completely agree, and I'm also very excited about the detective aspect because I feel like it's something we've barely seen in any Batman movie. I think we've seen glimpses of it in the Keaton version. We've seen the most I think we saw was Val Kilmer figuring out the Riddler's riddles in Batman Forever, and then a little bit in like Nolan's Batman, but it was So, Rich, what you were saying?
Well, first, you guys are probably giving me more information than I know about this movie. I saw the trailer. I thought it was okay. It didn't blow me away. So I'm actually trying to go in with this with low expectations, but at the same time, this is the only thing up until recently with like Peacemaker and the last Suicide Squad movie. DC has been whiffing with the movies, and Batman's the only thing that they ever knock it out of the park, except for Superman Batman, which I didn't love. But for the most part, with Batman, DC is knocking it out of the park. Am I excited to see it? No, not really. But I'm gonna see it. And like I said, going in with low expectations, I'm hoping it blows me away. And that is kind of what I want it to be, which is kind of why I've forcibly stayed away from a lot of all the internet gobbledygook to have any preconceived notions. So that is my feeling on this movie.
Well,
that's fair.
I'm excited for you, Rich, that you're going in with no expectations. You haven't been spoiled with anything yet. So I hope you go in and this blows you away.
And there is one Batman thing I would like to bring up, and if I can find the meme for it, I totally will. They've been doing more and more Seinfeld memes. Specifically, the episode which Kramer's apartment is being neon red blindsided by the chicken place that opens up near them. And you had the scene where Jerry opens up and is like, "Oh my God, Kramer, what is that?" He did one where Kramer's like, "It's vengeance, Jerry," and then you just see Batman in red from the trailer, and I was just like, I could hear Kramer saying it in that like, "It's vengeance, Jerry," and just you have Batman just. I was just like, it was one of those moments where I was like, that was good, that was well done. That was well played. So it gave me a guffaw. But moving on.
Nice.
Leah, what else did you have?
Just the only other couple items. Catwoman, the new Catwoman Hunted came out. I started watching it last night. It's I need to give it another try because we're actually going to talk about it tomorrow. But it's very Japanese anime.
That's interesting.
The artwork is Japanese anime, like big-eyed Catwoman is weird. It's really weird.
It's a manga style.
Maybe weird isn't the word. Maybe it's just a little different, and it's just not what you expected.
Unconventional. I should say, not weird. It's unconventional. Something I haven't seen in a DC animated yet.
Okay, well, listen, that's totally fine. So no worries.
Hey, I don't know if you guys have checked it out, but there is a new series on Amazon called Reacher, which is, the Tom Cruise Jack Reacher series.
Right.
I guess originally it was a book series. And we've got Alan Richman taking on the Reacher role, who recently played Hawk in the Titan series.
Oh, okay.
On HBO Max, and they killed him in that series purposely because he was doing this Reacher series. I watched the first episode a couple nights ago when Harley had a migraine, and was really impressed with the writing. I thought it was going to be kind of boring and episodic, and I got excited by the end of the episode. And then she and I ended up watching 3 episodes in a row last night, and it's a fun series. A little violent, little comedic, not to the level of John Cena, but pretty decent.
Hey, and one thing I would like to point out is that apparently Steven Soderbergh was had an interview recently where he discussed if he would ever do, similar to others, like if would he ever do like a comic book movie or something in that franchise, and he said that he wouldn't, because he prefers his his independent movies, his not so populars and whatnot. But he said something about how he felt that comics lacked like showing sex or intimacy, and of course James Gunn, being the ever so quippy one, was responded with screenshots from, funny enough, a lot of his movies. He was like, yeah, I mean, they don't show it often, but there are moments where people are clearly fucking. And one of the moments was, I guess there was like one was the Harley love scene from Suicide Squad. The second one was, I guess, from Peacemaker, where I guess a very superhero three-way happened between him and Vigilante.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Which I was just like, wonderful. And then there was even a scene, I guess, where Drax in, I guess, Guardians 1 was kind of getting dressed after spending some time with an alien woman. And
also Eternals, there's a flat out sex scene on the beach.
There you go. So my point being is, like, yes, they're not as explicit because Marvel is still owned by Disney, so they're not going to go too hard. HBO, you can do whatever you want. If you've ever lived through the 90s, you definitely know HBO After Dark had no problem showing skin. But it was just, again, it's funny you have that, but again, it wasn't what I feel other filmmakers have done, with it's just like, they'll make some comments, but maybe they're not a fan, and then they're like, oh, this person hates comics. And I was like, if we read the interview, that's not at all what they said, but James Cameron hates Wonder Woman will get so much more clicks than he has criticisms about such industry, but such is the world.
Right. Hey guys, I was thinking about a segment called Wah of the Week. So this week's Wah of the Week goes to Channing Tatum, who was crying about his movie getting shelved, Gambit, and that he has not seen any Marvel movies since because it is too traumatic for him. So Wah of the Week goes to you, Channing Tatum. Wah,
and it's sad because I actually think he would have done a good job as Gambit. I would have been fine. Although I will say that I did like, I think it was Taylor Kitsch when his Gambit showed up in X-Men Origins Wolverine. I thought he did a great job. And then there was another Gambit that was in a fan film who did a stupendous job. I can't remember it, but I remember watching. I was like, wow, this guy's killing it. But that's ridiculous. Like, he can't watch any since. There's been a lot of good movies, dude. Like, get over it.
Yeah, stop crying. If that's the worst thing in his life,
Yeah, well, whatever.
What do you want me to tell you?
Yeah, pretty much.
Keep bringing in that Magic Mike money.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have a third one because we got to see where
wait, there was a second one.
Yeah, there was a Magic Mike 2.
Okay,
and there's probably gonna be a Magic Mike 3. It's gonna be like Spider-Man 3, but sexier. So that dance scene is definitely gonna be hotter because it won't be so much disco. It'll be disco stripping. Sexy.
Okay. Well, on that note, just real quick, if you're watching, what the hell, the Peacemaker,
yes.
Rich, you're all caught up.
Oh yeah, I'm all caught up. I've even been watching Podly now, which is the podcast that they advertised in the beginning of Peacemaker.
Oh, so, sweet.
Yeah, and actually, I actually recommend you guys going on YouTube and checking out the first episode of that, because you can actually fast forward through the two co-hosts. I hate to say it, they're not that energizing, but they do an interview with James Gunn in the first episode. And he's like a little kid. He is so energized and happy about this series. It brought me joy to see the happiness on his face.
It's so much fun. The dance scene for the intro,
Mm-hmm.
you got to watch it every single time. You know, it's just.
I think James Gunn has always been the kind of person that he's just better when he's left to his own devices. Like when you try like conforming him to his style, it's like, okay, it's like with Marvel, it's like, okay, I'm going to do a Marvel movie, but I'm going to do it my way. And look, everybody knows who the fuck Guardians of the Galaxy is. Before, only us three would have known who the hell these dudes are. Now, you know, if you hum Hooked on a Feeling, people are going to do that like, oh, yeah, nice. Good reference there, bro. Like, cool. You know, and even his Suicide Squad was fantastic.
Oh, yeah, it was.
You know, and even some of his other work, James Gunn, I've constantly been, you know, praising. Even these, like, Slither is a great horror movie. God, what was it? That superhero movie he did with Rainn Wilson. Super.
Oh, yeah. Super
yeah.
was crazy.
Super was a weird fucking movie, but, you know, still great. You know, even like one of my favorite zombie movies, the Dawn of the Dead remake, which directed by Zack Snyder, but the whole script was written by James Gunn. And you're like, no wonder it's so fucking good and so goddamn quotable because it's, you know, him. But, you know, I mean, I definitely Peacemaker's on my list because, again, I thoroughly enjoy his work and everything you guys have said, everything other people have told me, that it's just a delight. And I'm just so happy because we just need that kind of material, in my opinion, that it's just not serious. Like, yes, it takes itself seriously being a story and fans and stuff, but it has fun, you know.
Oh, it has a
Easter
lot of
eggs
fun.
are tremendous in it.
Well, that's
yeah.
what I was going to say. They reference Kite Man multiple times in the latest episode.
Is there ever a hell yeah?
No.
Oh,
No.
damn it.
But there is John Cena's character, Peacemaker, tries to explain how Superman enjoys anal.
You know, I gotta really watch this show. That's all I'm gonna say. All right, so
Yes.
So I guess, is there anything else, or should we get started with the show?
Well, let's get started. We need to travel back to 1990.
Nice. It's a good time.
I think it's a very good time.
Yep.
1 year
That's
out
why
of
I'm
high
sitting
school.
comfy.
You guys ready?
Yes, sir.
It's time to 3 years old.
Okay, is everybody ready? We need to center ourselves, get ourselves in the right mindset for tonight's story. And we're going to do a little traveling back into time. So I need the time hat. And computer, set the time circuits for 1990.
Captain, time travel circuit set for 1990.
1990. It was a good year for me. I was in full-on dork mode. It's the year I placed as a semi-finalist in the Nintendo World Championships. I had a perfect job for a kid in high school. I worked for a video game company, and I was writing a book on video games, the Ultimate Hint book. Didn't really go anywhere, but you know what? I was in high school, and it was a just an amazing journey. So in 1990, gas cost us $1.15 a gallon. Girl Scout cookies were $2 a box, and the milk to dunk those in was $1.70 a gallon. You could go to Disney World for a mere $31 for an adult, $25 for a kid. And if you're going to live in Florida, a house in Fort Lauderdale costs you $86,000. Movie tickets, on the other hand, were $4.25. And speaking of movies, the top grossing movie of that year was Ghost. But us being dorks, the movies that we went to go see, Dick Tracy, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go. Back to the Future 3, Dark Man, and who could forget My Blue Heaven.
Have a nice day. Fuck you.
The top show on TV that year was Cheers. I absolutely love Cheers, but you might have been watching Who's the Boss and Family Matters.
Did I do that?
Saturday morning cartoons in 1990 were full on dork as well. Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters, Beetlejuice, more TMNT, and Captain N and the Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3. Those were on my list to watch when I was a kid. 1990 was also a good year in comics. That year was dominated by Spider-Man and Batman. So that year, Legends of the Dark Knight issues 5 through 8 were top selling. But then, a little story by, you might not have heard of him, but somebody, Todd McFarlane, was it? He released a Spider-Man series, new series, and issues 1 through 7 topped the charts. Issue 1 selling over 400,000 copies. And, he had to try to find a platinum edition. I have, not the platinum edition, but I have, a couple number ones myself. Don't think they're worth anything. But anyways, it was a great book. Also, 1990 was a great year for video games. As I mentioned, the Nintendo World Championship started, where I mentioned I was the semifinalist for Connecticut. We also saw the release of Super Nintendo. Game Boy was released that year, and Genesis, along with the Neo Geo home system, which I remember selling at the video game store that I worked at. That was like $400 for a single game, and the system was like $1,200. It was insane, but you know what? People bought them. The best-selling video games in 1990 were Tetris for the Game Boy and the Nintendo, and before that, that was actually a Tetris by Tengen. Huge, crazy story on that, where Tengen released the game, without the rights to sell it. It was definitely the best version of Tetris, in my opinion. But also, along with Super Mario Bros. 3, was the best-selling game of 1990. Also in 1990, we're still going to the arcades. Top quarter munchers for that year were TMNT, more TMNT, Final Fight, and Super Off-Road. So that concludes our journey back to 1990. That was a great year, and you know what? I hope you had a chance to enjoy it as well. If not, you saw it through my eyes. And with that, we're going to go on to our story. Thanks for listening. How'd you like that?
Whoa.
Send me back. That is such a good time.
Yes, sir.
Did you say
you were the 1990 champion for Connecticut?
That's what I said.
I was I was one of the semifinalists.
Okay, so how far did you get?
Just
top how many? Top 3, top 5?
No, I think it was like it was probably like 20.
Okay,
because there was a level up past semifinalists. But yeah, it's I made
what
it
game
to,
took you down?
It was definitely Mario. It's my nerves. It was. I was a teenager and my nerves just shot because I'm like on the big screen. They focus on my screen. It's like what was that movie, The Wizard?
Wizard. I was just about to say, did you watch The Wizard and think
I
could have been me?
But that's the whole thing. It's like 4 of us up on the stage playing. And that
everyone's watching.
It's they put you on a big screen, and the only thing that saved me was Tetris. I killed it at Tetris, and it's
Tetris. It's one of my favorite games.
But
totally.
The fact that I'm sorry, I mean all the cartoons, especially Slimer and the Ghostbusters, but the fact that you referenced My Blue Heaven, that has been one of my favorite buddy crime movies ever. And I tell people all the time, like, y'all want to see a funny ass Steve Martin movie? Like, don't get me wrong, The Jerk, Planes, Trains, Automobiles, they're all great. But this movie, hands down, oh my God.
Oh yeah. I love My Blue Heaven.
You haven't lived.
I think I watched it around Christmas this year. It's a great movie.
Yeah, you haven't lived till you've seen Steve Martin teach Rick Moranis how to merengue in literally 10 minutes. I was like, it's not that easy. I know from experience it's not that easy, but it's wonderful. It's a great movie.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess like the time version of Leo said, let's get on with the story. So before we get to the story, I do want to kind of commemorate a little bit of Brian Augustyn, who is the writer for it. I do want to go over some of his history because I didn't know some of his credits as well as I thought. Like the thing that really stuck out to me the most was Gotham by Gaslight. That was the big thing, but he did a lot. And I definitely, since we're remembering him with this, I definitely think we should do that. So Brian got his start in the industry in 1986. He was the editor for True Studios' Trollards. He then later edited Siphons and Speed Racer for Now Comics in 1987. And then in 88, he joined DC. He used to, as a co-editor for Action Comics. And then later, he also then was co-editor for The Flash, Justice League, and the Impact Comics line of titles. In 1989, he was the editor for The Flash. And then he hired Mark Waid as the writer in 1992, which, of course, led to Waid's well-received and still acclaimed 8-year run. And they continued to collaborate a lot through DC. Some of the collaborations were The Comet, which was a DC Impact crossover, and the Flash spinoff Impulse, which I seem to recall had artist Humberto Ramos on it before he would be known as a prominent Spider-Man artist for Marvel. He was also the managing editor for Visionary Comics. He worked as a story editor for Red Giant Entertainment. And as a solo writer, as we know, he wrote Batman Gotham by Gaslight, its sequel, Master of the Future. He also wrote Black Condor, Marvel's Imperial Guard, Wildstorm's Out There, and Dream Productions of Mega Man. Yep, and a lot of what his work did was essentially with Mark Waid. So they did The Crusaders for DC Impact, Painkiller Jane, Exo Man of War, and then when he left his position as the editor in 1996, he teamed up with Mark Waid to co-write The Flash for a year between 96 and 97, and then in 98 and 2000, they collaborated again on the life of The Flash, and they also co-wrote the story of The Flash issue 142, which is when Wally West marries his longtime partner, Linda Park. So, gotta give credit. He did a lot of really good work. And like I said, I met him at, again, credit to one of our favorite supporters, Mitch at Terrificon. That's how I got to meet him. And he did a lovely tribute when Brian passed, remembering him in 2016, which is how I got to meet him. And he was great. I have to tell you, he was a very funny, good-humored guy. I talked to him how much I loved Gotham by Gaslight, and he did this great Painkiller Jane and Hellboy crossover that he did with Jimmy Palmiotti, who was very much heavily involved in Painkiller Jane, and Rick Leonardi, who I knew is one of the co-creators of Spider-Man 2099. And in the series, I remember asking him, because in the comic, Hellboy and Painkiller Jane defeat the demonic entity they're fighting by blasting a Chumbawamba song. And I remember asking about it. He told me, and it's so funny. He told me the story about it, and I think he said, "Well, if it's gonna be any Chumbawamba song, you're gonna defeat true evil. Might as well be that one." And I'm like, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, he was a really pleasant man, and the amount of love that I've been seeing online from people who worked with him, fans and whatnot. I mean, yeah, you can't control stroke, but 67, I still feel like he still had some good years ahead of him, and it's just such a shame when that just kind of comes out of nowhere and takes you. So, with that in mind, let's commemorate with what I still feel is his finest work. One of his finest works, Gotham by Gaslight, which, for everyone who needs to understand how important this was essentially the first Elseworlds comic that was ever. So the success of this comic alone here is essentially why we have Kingdom Come, Red Rain, Superman Red Son, and all the other great Elseworlds is because of this book.
Nice.
In which he teams up with the other great collaborator. I mean, you couldn't have a better team. You had him and then the famous Mike Mignola, whose artwork here is so fantastic. But years from later, Mr. Mignola would be known for creating another famous character in comics who we know as Hellboy.
Hellboy.
You know, so naturally, as a fan of Hellboy, I thoroughly enjoyed this. And I'm still very upset that when I met Mike, I didn't get this sign because it's still one of my favorite Batman stories. So let's get into it.
Certainly.
The premise is just fantastic.
It is. I just want to say real quick. So we're going to be talking about both the comic and the movie. Mm-hmm. And I think, Drew, as we go through this, is maybe point out some things that, you know, the comic had that, you know, kind of were referenced in the movie. I know it's not a exact one for one. Matter of fact, it seemed like the movie pulled a lot from the sequel.
Yeah, that's definitely something that when I first watched it, I noticed. I felt like they definitely got, like, the story itself is very much adapted from the original, but a lot of extra things are very much from the second one. So the writer, I believe his name is John or James Krieg, clearly was a fan, and he kind of amalgamated both stories. So I
didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to bring that up.
Doing great. Leo, you're fine, man.
Please go ahead.
No, so I mean, essentially the premise is fantastic. I mean, it really is the simplest thing. You have Batman, you have Bruce Wayne on finally back from his quest to better himself, to fulfill his promise of avenging his parents, with his own unique Batman style costume. You know, he besieges in Gotham, and Gotham is already dealing with a big problem. And it's not the Joker, it's not the Riddler, it's not the Scarecrow, all of whom would have been really fun to see. And in a Gaslight capacity, the foe is one very near and dear to history. It is the infamous serial killer Jack the Ripper, who has decided, fuck London, I'm going to go for some new hunting grounds, and I'm going to go to the one place in the new world which is shitty enough for me to have fun, Gotham City.
Yes, and travel in the same boat together, no less.
Oh yeah. I think the other thing that is really great is that, and me and Rich were talking about this beforehand, is that the book has these little wonderful nods to characters you already know. In here, like, one perfect example is we basically established that there is a Gotham by Gaslight Joker. You know, look at that. That's terrifying. You know, and in this one, he's not, the Red Hood. He's not, he's not just some gangster. He's a widower who wines and dines old rich women, and then he poisons them with poison. And then, of course, when he tried to get caught, he tried poisoning himself. He fucked it up, and now he's a grinning, ghoulish lunatic who clearly looks, in some way, as it must be an homage to. Is it Rich? Is it Cesar Romero, or is it the other guy?
No, you're thinking of there was a movie, a black and white movie, that the Joker was based on. But the name is totally escaping me. But yeah, that is like clearly an homage to that black and white Image movie.
Okay. But yeah, it was very. This book to me was very well researched. It's very well written. You know, both Mike and Brian did a great job of creating a little niche in time where you just see how Batman. Yep, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, I was just looking it up on my phone. Thank you, Leo.
Terrifying.
You're welcome.
You get the idea of this is how Batman would have been created, and he's still just as scary. He's just as effective, but he's contending with this killer. And
Just real quick, that's Conrad Veidt, and the movie was The Man Who Laughs.
there you go.
And,
Right.
there's a Joker story, The Man Who Laughs, as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's Ed Brubaker and Doug Mankey. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good. It's
Yeah,
all
Jerry
important.
Robinson said that a lot of the influence was from that movie for the Joker.
But I think this again, Brian's story is one thing, but Mike, his control of just the darkness and shadows, it's very evident here. You can clearly see that stuff that would just become a celebrated part of Hellboy here. You know, just this one scene where you have him just taking down a bunch of robbers is just chillingly perfect. You know, and everything is still fantastically very rooted in reality. So, you know, it's a very real story. And, you know, again, as a person who, you know, has a degree in history, I really appreciated the research. You know, everything was very grounded to me here. And honestly, it just was I mean, again, I reread it again, and I can't tell you how many times I must have reread it. I never get tired of reading this story. Like, it's still a great read, and that is a sign of, you know, wonderful comics, is that you keep coming back to it and you never get tired of it. So that's my review.
Yeah,
so let you all talk.
To me, the beauty of the like you said, Mike Mignola's art, it's dark, it's raw, it's not super sharp, but that's his style. But he's also, like, in scenes like this, he's able to pull it seems like the Batman imagery is more like I said, dark and raw, whereas like the other image that you had just had on the previous page is more crisp.
Yeah.
So he's capable of doing both, but I really think his darker is where he shines. And I don't want to I want to hand it over to Leo, because I'd rather talk about the end and how interesting I think, if we're spoiling it, the depth and
I mean, it's been out since the 90s, right?
Who did it and why he did it.
Yeah,
is way more interesting.
That and also a wonderful cameo by Harvey Dent, pre Two-Face too.
Yeah,
you know, during the trial. No, as an origin story, this was fantastic, because essentially what it did is we got the true villain responsible for his parents' death. And again, the killer, who's, you know, the Joe Chill of it all, is just a hired gun. So, you know, there's really nothing to avenge. You know, it was just hired muscle. It could have been anybody.
Well, and you know, one thing to keep in sync is the reasoning behind a killer in both parts. You know, it's spoiler, and we're not going to reveal who it is unless you guys want to.
No, we're not.
But you know, it's totally different killers, totally different motives between the two, and I like the reasoning behind both. You know,
Yeah.
But the comic definitely felt more like a true detective story. It really had you guessing throughout the whole book. But the movie, it kind of definitely threw you off to the side. I didn't see it coming at all. And I think they did that on purpose, to have a character that you wouldn't even consider would be the killer.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
But,
and so since we're not going to ruin it, I'll say that essentially the killer was haunted by being laughed and mocked at, and the ramifications of that to Batman and his history and his family's history is terribly intricate. And as Drew said, the killer also turns out to be the one that killed his parents. And at the end of this, which I thought was really interesting, and that he hangs up the cowl because vengeance has been satisfied. things have come to fruition, and he hangs up. And there's a part of me that really wish they just left that story there, because that really changes as being an Elseworld story. It being just the one shot and not having the second half, and him just having hang up the cowl and leave it at that,
Right.
it is really poignant. And I get why they did a second story and moved on to it, because it was so popular, and of course it's a moneymaker. And the second story was a good story, but boy, I really, there was a really visceral part of me that was like, man, I wish they just left it right there.
And I think that's exactly the point of Elseworlds, Rich, is that it was that they had that freedom. You could end it there. A lot of Elseworlds, not just, with Batman, there were also ones with Superman, Green Lantern, Teen Titans, the Justice League, Wonder Woman. A lot of them were very much, the one and dones. It was, this is the story, this is the beginning, middle, end, that's it. Sure. And you didn't need to know anything more than what was presented. And like you said, some really popular ones have, been repeated. I mean, Dark Knight Returns is technically an Elseworld. Kingdom Come, we've seen a lot of presence of. Red Sun, Red Rain, super popular Elseworlds still find a way into the collective consciousness of DC. So, but again, they all wouldn't have even had that where they are without this story, because this is the one that really showed this is a different version of Batman's story, but it's still Batman.
Right.
Just looking at the both and comparing both, there is still a court scene, where Bruce is, on trial for the murders. He's found guilty by the same evidence. You have a eyewitness is a woman that has a drinking problem. Same thing with the movie. But one thing is the
voiced by Tara Strong, by the way, Leo.
Oh,
the crazy old lady. I noticed that when I was watching. Now I always watch the names in the animation. Constantly watching the names.
Yeah,
because
she referred to her as Harleen, so I was like, oh yeah. You know who this is?
Yeah. Yep. You really got more of a sense of time in the book, as it's countdown from when he's going to be hanged.
Yeah.
That definitely had the writing, and it definitely had like a over sense of doom that was coming. Will he escape or will he not? That really wasn't conveyed as much in the movie.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoyed the pre-part of the book where he's out in London getting training to be a detective.
Yes, they totally skipped that.
And they don't have that at all in the movie. And I'm like, boy, that's really lacking. I felt like that could have been pretty key to the storyline.
And I think that that's something that I would love to see in an animated film. Like, I would love to see the journey. I love seeing those stories. Like, again, one of the reasons that I really love Batman Begins as a Batman story is because you see Christopher Nolan explains how that Batman became, how he got the training, how he got the knowledge to then use those skills later as Batman. And he did it in such a way that it wasn't like, oh, anybody could do it. Because it's true, anybody could. But it's like, you see that it takes a specific training, a specific mindset, and everything. And it was just fascinating because instead of like, kind of like how we saw like Keaton, he'd already been Batman. You got a better idea of it really was an origin story. For me, what I also loved is that this is one of two Elseworlds where you see Batman talking to Sigmund Freud about what happened. There was a second one called Detective 27, where Bruce Wayne is an operative working for a secret society trying to stop this secret ploy to destroy the United States and government. And there's a moment where he's talking to Sigmund Freud, and Freud is like, at that point, that Batman hadn't become Batman. His identity was Detective 27, which, as we know, is a reference to the
Detective
book.
Comics number 27.
Yep. Right. And Freud says that it's like, it's really amazing that, the trauma that you experienced didn't lead to essentially becoming Batman, and it's just, again, like you have here where he's talking to Freud about the dreams of his parents and everything, kind of like, and it's just, again, that wonderful mix of historical with fantasy, which I feel comics, when they do it right, is just fantastic.
I agree. And just to get the references in there, the movie actually, instead of Freud, they had Hugo Strange.
Yes.
And I just wanted to point out, this scene here that's on the screen right now was redone in the movie, but it's the same. The killer had the same profession.
Yes.
And matter of fact, part of this was recreated in the movie, just a different twisting the story, a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, and then the ending is true Batman style. Ending like, oh God, who is that guy? Like, well, we're gonna need him, and you can literally almost hear like the Batman animated series. Leo, we said we're not going to show them the ending. Keep flip. No. We went too fast. You gotta pace yourself, man. You got that.
You said flip. You said flip.
Scroll up. Yeah, you just got that perfect Batman. You can almost hear the animated series theme in the back. She's just in there. It's just so good. And then, like Rich said, that they did come up with a sequel, which, again, I think the important thing is that sometimes you have to look at certain stories that it's not supposed to be the same book, because if it was, then why would you read it? It was, continuing the story. And, I think it's just funny because in a way, which in that story, everybody, Master of the Future, which we had, Brian is is joined by Eduardo Barreto. Excuse me. That one is officially an Elseworld, because by then Elseworlds were huge. That was a very major thing DC was doing a lot of. So you have, and that story is 3 years later, and like Rich said, Batman has retired. He's retired. He's engaged. Everything is great. He figures his debt to his parents has been satisfied. He's earned a happy life. Let Commissioner Gordon and the others, protect the city from madmen and criminals. But as we know, that doesn't happen.
No.
But it's also interesting because the villain, this one, which is essentially the Gotham by Gaslight version of Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
Troy.
Yeah. Alexandre Leroy. That it's like I said, it's a different villain, but I definitely think it caught Raz's, his, ego, his ego, his sophistication, but also I think it also proved like the lengths he'll go to get his goals. I mean, a Zeppelin with essentially a laser destroying Gotham was pretty great. But again, like you point out, Rich, is that there's levels to this story. And it was really wonderful that there's one story, and then near the end you find out there's a completely different one. Like, oh, this destruction it was so senseless, but it's like, yes, but it had a reason. And then, in true Batman fashion, he figures it out.
So I didn't get the Ra's al Ghul feel from it. I got a Lex Luthor because it was two L's. Well, not two L's, but Alexander
that would,
Leroy.
that would make a lot of sense. I honestly felt a bit Ra's simply because of, the whole thing about, master of the city, protecting the future and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I can totally see that too, especially Alexander Leroy. I honestly, Leo, I never considered that, but I can totally see that.
Yeah.
I didn't see either of those. I thought it was a totally original character. So interesting that everyone's different perception.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And obviously, my first thing thought was, are they bringing in the Joker with this as well?
Oh, the clown Gatling gun toy.
Yeah.
Right. I thought maybe a version of the Toy Man, perhaps.
Oh, there we go.
That's interesting. And that's like what I love about these older comics, which I hate to say it, that a lot of newer ones don't have, is that you can sit and discuss them. You can, like, again, I've owned this book for years and I never considered these things, but we're talking about it and we have that perspective, and it's great because I'm like, wow, like I never really thought about that. And I'm like, could that have been it? And I feel like if Brian if we had been fortunate enough to interview Brian about it, I really don't know what he would have probably said. I feel like he might have probably confirmed some of it, or he would have been like, guys, you're making me more clever than I really was, Right. But I know it's great. And then on top of it, Eduardo Barreto, he's a wonderful artist. It's a shame that he too has passed on, like all greats eventually will.
Yes. Pecorino, please. Pecorino. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
Oh, yeah, we have to get the nice pecorino done here. Yes, thank you, Harley. Thank you.
And just for the side note, Eduardo Barreto was an Uruguayan, I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong, artist who's very, very popular. Two of his children, actually all of his children are artists, and two of them actually work in comics. You have Diego Barreto as an artist, and his daughter Andrea used to be a colorist. And his son Guillermo is an inker and illustrator. All of them occasionally collaborated with their dad. He unfortunately passed away in 2011. And it's funny because one of his last works, which was DC Retroactive, Superman in the 70s, was actually finished from his hospital bed.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But I just, again, got to give credit where credit's due, But back to the story, yeah, and it's great. And I think for me, the one thing that I loved is that he keeps talking about his friend, and then his friend is essentially, and now I'm seeing more and more Lex Luthor, because I feel like this friend would be essentially kind of like one of Luthor's sidekicks, which I just enjoyed, that he kept talking about like it's a real person. And I was like, this is a freaking machine. This is like the equivalent of the blow up pilot in Airplane.
Yeah.
And then he knocks the head off. You killed my friend. I'll kill you. And I'm like, oh my God, it's not that serious, man.
Yeah, he's
I'll put the head back on. And it was also nice having one of Bruce's girlfriends, or in this case, fiance, be such an advocate for Batman. Like, I'm so used to, like when we read Batman Earth 1, you had the female Dent, oh, Batman's a menace and everything, it's just nice to see that she was kind of one of the main things that pushed Bruce back. She was like, it wasn't Catwoman, it was Gotham will need a Batman, and she got it. She was like, listen, you got to do you, we'll still be a thing, go protect the city.
And we get part of that in the movie where Selena knows he's Batman, and
even though
seems
she was going to oust him.
yeah. And then we get an opposite, thinking back, previous movies, Mask of the Phantasm, where the girlfriend knows he's Batman and just wants him to hang everything up.
Andrea Beaumont.
Yeah.
But and it's also so interesting because I've only seen Batman with a sword a few times, and it's usually fighting Ra's al Ghul, because he's got that old-fashioned nobility and censorship. But it's so interesting when you see Batman with a sword and you realize no matter what, Batman is a threat. Like, he's a formidable everything. But again, the story was just so well grounded in, like, it was nothing that happened here felt like, oh, it wouldn't have happened at that time. The style, the machinery, the devastation, it was all there.
When you talk about the time and the machinery, it's interesting, Drew. When I was watching the animation, first there was, I guess it was a steam engine version of the Bat Cycle.
Yeah. I again,
and
the fan of me was like, wow, that's cool. And the part of me was like, I feel like this takes away from the story a little.
Right. And then I also felt that the motors on the dirigible really bothered me. I was like, would they really have those big giant, even if there were steam motors on a giant dirigible, would that even work?
There were some things that I feel like, like I said, I feel like they just kind of had in there to move the story along, but it wasn't as accurate as it could have been. And it doesn't hurt the story, but it's like you said, it's small details that almost noticing them kind of take you out of it. Right. It kind of pulls you back from the majesty.
But one thing I really did enjoy was how they portrayed Selena Kyle as a defender of the weak and the poor, and how they portrayed that it wasn't just women, it was poor women of ill repute or lack of money and knowledge, and that still goes on today. People are murdered like that unless it's a high profile case, good neighborhood people. They don't really get that respect. So I really appreciated that they added that element to it.
And also, to compliment, it was also great to see that Selena was going to expose Bruce's identity, and it wasn't out of like gain. It wasn't for a reward. It was to protect people, because she didn't want him maintaining Batman's identity to put other people at risk, because they thought he was the Ripper. So, they're like, okay, well, if we kill him, the murders stop. But she knew that he wasn't, so the murders were still going to keep going. So it was kind of like, this is we need to wake up Gotham, that nobody is safe. Like, you have got the wrong man.
Right. And without ruining the bad guy, I mean, basically it was a beloved character gone zealot, and to the point where at the end he
snapped,
pretty much walks into the fire and burns to death.
Yeah. And it was pretty unnerving, but it was a twist that I personally understood. And then
just real quick, we did get a couple other characters, definitely some nods. Well, not really nods, but full on, characters. We did get Poison Ivy in the story.
Well, Isley was killed early on.
Yeah. And we also got the 3 Robins.
Yep. Yes. That was rewatching it. That was one of my favorite parts, because I feel like a lot of their personalities were still very much there. Like, Dick was very much the leader. Jason was still the somewhat arrogant hothead, and Tim was very much the the idealist, kind of like the dreamer, but still can hold his own.
Because you've got to pick a pocket or two, boy. You've got to pick a pocket or two.
But I did love that one scene where they're talking about how the guy who they were working with would find them, and then Batman just breaks his leg. He's like, yeah, he's not going to be running after anybody. And I'm like, yo, Gotham by Gaslight does not play. I was like, God damn. And then
who knew Alfred had an employment agency?
Oh yeah, that too. Figure I was like, you picked the wrong pocket. And another great addition in my mind was, and I very much liked it, was Leslie Tompkins as Sister Leslie. Like a great way to incorporate her. You still had, she was still a nun, but she was a sassy nun. Like, they're talking about.
She was an old Irish nun, and she'd wrap your knuckles if you're a bad boy, Drew.
But no, it wasn't even that. She when they're talking, then you get the, what is it going to be? Is it going to be brunette or blonde or redhead? Oh, James Gordon, curse your tongue. My bet's on the blonde. I was just like, it was just for me. I always appreciate the subtle lines versus like, oh, look at me, we made this reference. I was like, it's always better when it's just subtle. Like it's part of the story. It's not, oh, look, we made this reference. I'm like, okay, great. That's cool. Does it help the story? If not, fuck off. Now, the last one that I definitely want to talk about is a little out of the way. And it did come as a bit of a surprise to me because I didn't expect to find it. A little precursor one is around, I want to say 2000. Looking it up now because like Mr. Time Circuit's over here. I want to make sure I got my dates right. So around 2006, a lot changed from the last time we saw Master of the Future, which was 2 years after Gotham by Gaslight, which was released initially as a one-shot in 1989. So then 2 years later, in 1991, we had Master of Future. So then we jumped to 2006.
2007.
What?
2007.
What about 2007?
Countdown to Final Crisis.
Well, yeah. So 2006, 2007. You have the crises, you have the infinite, all that. You have really more of a definition of the world. So Gotham by Gaslight is actually identified as an individual Earth with its own existence and whatnot, and that's Earth 19. So then fast forward another year or two, depending on which date you're following, mine or his. You have an event called Countdown, which is the event leading up to Final Crisis, which was the last of the great crises, supposedly. And Countdown, which was very much a heavily criticized story, essentially saw, among the many things happening, is that Ray Palmer, the Atom, had disappeared. And essentially what had happened is that you had a group of heroes. You had Jason Todd, a.k.a. the former Robin, and then current Red Hood. You had Donna Troy, former Wonder Girl, and you had Kyle Rayner, who had previously been Ion as a Green Lantern, and you had a Monitor, who are a group of extra-dimensional entities who patrol and document and keep an eye on the multiverse, traveling, following the trail of Ray Palmer, for he had gone to separate Earths. So Countdown, the search for Ray Palmer, was this group of motley heroes going to different Earths trying to find Ray Palmer. And of course, they went to the Wildstorm universe. They went to the Crime Syndicate universe. They went to Red Rain, World of Vampires. And then they made a wonderful stop at Gotham by Gaslight in January 2008. And to much joy, we had this, which was written by Brian Augustyn. So you had that wonderful authenticity of continuing the story. And I feel like, me, I've read the series, but I have to ask, you guys having not read any of it, how did this fare to you?
I think we lost Rich. But I mean, this was definitely a nice bonus edition. It definitely didn't take anything away from the previous two encounters. But I enjoyed it. It just added more to the mythos.
I think for me again, and hey, Rich,
Hey, sorry, technical difficulties.
it's all good. The food must have been really good. Personally, I just enjoyed it because, again, we saw more of the world slowly expanding because you had the idea that eventually Batman would not be the only hero.
Yeah.
And personally, I love this version of Blue Beetle. And I love this idea that this Batman would, of course, kind of be the first. He would be training. He's this world's Superman. He's the one that ushers in this generation of heroes. So you have, Ted Cord, who is the second Blue Beetle, joining in when yet again Gotham is being attacked by a creature who is attacking women and the public, and then these heroes join up against with Batman to kind of figure out that and the personal connection. So it basically becomes DC heroes plus Victorian heroes fighting vampires. So, I mean, what more can you hate? So
Fun.
what I was saying to Leo, Rich, was that, having not really read any of the other books or whatnot that this is a part of, how did this story fare to you? Leo felt it was like a nice little extra bonus.
Yeah, it was a bonus. It was nice to see that sort of era again. But again, also, I didn't read it, so I didn't have a total connection to the story.
Right.
So I didn't have any like deep feelings about this particular issue. But I did enjoy this version of Blue Beetle. I thought he was interesting in an aspect that we haven't seen the Blue Beetle in sort of this kind of seem more magical and mystical.
Yeah.
Than alien.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. And I think that the one thing that I particularly enjoyed is that you had this idea that at that time, Jason Todd, who was very much still searching for an identity, he was a Robin, then he was the Red Hood, and then he kind of wasn't, he had this idea that he felt home here. He felt like he could have stayed here. And of course he couldn't because it's not his world. It was just really nice. But then I also enjoyed that at the end, you have Batman and the Blue Beetle being like, yeah, other worlds. And I was like, yeah, I feel like this is going to happen again. So you might want to up my training. We're going to need to be ready for this shit. And to my knowledge, I don't think they've gone back to Gotham by Gaslight. I have to say, with Mr. Augustyn's passing, I don't know if they will. But I mean, if we can still keep using Kirby's work for years after his death, I mean, I think anything's possible. But no, I like I said, I admittedly need to read more of Brian Augustyn's Flash run. I've never really been the biggest Flash fan, so I figured I might as well start there. But I thoroughly enjoyed his work. I definitely think Gotham by Gaslight's popularity means it will live on, and I think that's probably the best compliment that you can get as a writer. Your legacy is preserved. So
Exactly.
Well
said, Drew.
I have my moments. It comes and goes. My mouth's getting dry.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Just real quick. It says Wikipedia, and Wikipedia can't be wrong. Well, it could be. They say, additionally, Gotham by Gaslight Batman was briefly featured in the limited series Dark Knight's Metal.
That would make sense. There was a lot of Batman featured in that. A lot of them.
A video game based on a comic book was planned for release.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
Man, I would have played the hell out of that. That would have been dope.
Ooh, I did not know this. Season pass holders of Batman Arkham Origins were awarded with a special costume for Batman that was based off of Gotham by Gaslight.
That was probably the Gotham by Gaslight costume.
Yeah.
I have seen, because I know Steampunk Batman is definitely something that people do at cons. I think I've seen a Gotham by Gaslight Batman or two. And I mean, it's always nice. It's nice to see a costume that will fit in at both Comic-Con and technically at the Ren Fair.
Hey, gentlemen, I'm going to have to let you guys finish this off. I'm having a back spasm, and I don't want to fall over in front of the screen. So
That would be great.
Enjoy the rest of the thing.
We
Have a great
definitely will.
evening. 4.5 crowbars across the board for me.
Awesome. Thank you,
Thank
Rich.
you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Rich.
See you soon.
Back.
Thank you.
Leo, honestly, I'm going to agree with that too. I think 4.5 is a wonderful rating for this. It's like I said, very few books are perfect, but this is a great read. And again, made in the 90s, in which I've often felt that DC in the 90s was a wonderful playground of great stories and things. Not everything worked, but a lot of the times DC in the 90s was really killing it. And this is just another great gem from that time, which I think can still live on. So 4.5 for me as well.
There we go. I agree. I thoroughly enjoyed it myself. And like I said, I watched the movie when it first came out without reading the book. And I didn't really care for it. But now, reading the book again, or actually reading the book for the first time, then watching the movie, I had a whole new appreciation for it.
Yeah, sometimes you really do have to read the source material, because then you kind of can look at it differently. But sometimes it helps looking at it without that, because then you can kind of see the movie as a movie versus it's a nerd movie.
Yeah.
So
cool beans.
Now, to end it, I am on Facebook, because I know Leo was going to like, hey, Drew, where can people find you? I'm on Facebook. I'm Ghostbuster Man 1984 on Instagram. I do a lot of work with Screen Rant. I do a lot of stuff here. So if you look me up via either one, you'll probably find me. I'm very busy, but I'm trying to be better and responding to people. So yeah,
you're a busy man.
Busy man.
Yeah. So definitely check out Drew, Ghostbuster Man 1984 on Instagram. And for me, just Google Leo Pond. But I run a little thing called the Dorkening Podcast Network. We got a ton of shows on a network, a lot of awesome people doing a lot of awesome stuff. So definitely check it out. We have live streams going on through most of the week. We have radio now, Dead Dork Radio, which you can actually find some of our shows streaming. And it's a mix of, awesome dorky music with, clips from, some of the different shows. 40 shows on a network, a lot of people, putting in a lot of awesome stuff for the radio. Just a lot of cool stuff. Go follow us. And with that, we'll catch you guys later. Bye.
Paces, everyone.